Okay, afternoon everybody. Good to see you all here. With a great panel, we're going to have a good chat about practical strategies and uncovering solutions towards electrification. What I'm going to do is let everybody introduce themselves, just give the name and the company, and then we're going to have a good chat about how we can help people. So, starting off with you, Alastair.
Hi, good afternoon. Alastair Macintyre, representing Einride. I head up the UK operation. UK is a key market for Einride. We launched in late April into UK. Other markets we're in is the Nordics, Benelux, Germany and US, but UK represents a significant market for us going forward. We effectively provide an end-to-end solution for freight mobility solutions with the innovative use of technology, be it electrification, digitisation and autonomous transport.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed. Andy?
Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Scott. I'm Head of Electromobility and Product Development for Renault Trucks in the UK. One of the leading manufacturers in the area, and the early adopters, bringing products both for light commercial and medium and heavy duty with our tracked units during the range later this year.
Thanks. James?
Hi, I'm James Brown, not the famous one, just in case anybody's wondering. I work for Energy Saving Trust, and my role is to help fleets decarbonise quicker. So we analyse fleets and advise on the best path according to how that fleet is to help decarbonisation happen quicker than it otherwise would do.
Sounds to me like you've got all the answers already, James. So anyway, okay, that's it. That's Rick at the end there.
Hi everyone, Rick Nimbley from Geotab. I'm one of the business development managers. For those that haven't heard about Geotab, we are a connected vehicle business, connecting 3.5 million vehicles across the world, all 7 continents, including the UK, of course. And yeah, really keen to discuss how we can help and support in that transition to a sustainable future.
Okay, that's great, Rick. Thanks, Rick. And obviously my name is Campbell from Campbell's Consultancy. So all we do is literally day in, day out, try and help transitioning from diesel to electric for the most part anyway. Okay, come on. Rick, come on, tell us, telematics obviously must play and should play a big part in this. How can you help the client or the customer make that transition?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is understanding, one, what their future strategy is, but also how they're operating today. So the way that I always describe what we do at Geotab is it's a solution today, scalable for tomorrow. I think it's really key to understand, infrastructure is a part of it, but you need data at the centre to drive those decisions. You can put all the infrastructure in place, but if said driver can't even charge on their driveway because they live in a flat, and actually that's not a model that you want. So you need to use the behaviour of those vehicles and the real life data which we gather from the 3.5 million connected vehicles. You need to use that real life data, do the analysis, which we can support end customers, whether they be a 2-vehicle fleet or 100,000 vehicles, right? And everywhere in between. Use that data to really then drive those procurement decisions. Maybe range anxiety is still a thing in the space. You hear it now and then. It used to be very, very prevalent. But actually, if you understand the behaviour of your vehicles, you can then understand, well, actually, we can procure these vehicles. And in the meantime, while we're waiting, maybe a long, lengthy time, right, to get them into the country, we can use other tools, for example, our Green Fleet dashboard, to reduce carbon within the ICE fleet in the interim.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much indeed. James, you say you help fleets do this sort of thing, so what do you do? What's the practical steps that you get involved with?
Well, starting with data, usually. It's a little bit of an assumption that the fleet has got access to good data. So the start point would be understanding what data there is and how it's used. And it may be necessary to point the fleet in the direction of somebody like Geotab or another telematics provider to get that base data in place, because without that there's a lot of assumptions and a lot of guesswork. And going from there, it's looking at the fleet and how it works in terms of how that would compare as a like-for-like replacement. But it's taking it a step further. It's not just saying, well, just because this vehicle and that vehicle do this as a diesel vehicle, we'll just replace like with like. It's taking the bigger picture, because there might be 20 vehicles, and if you look at the data, none of them might be within a single charge range of a battery. But if you then analyse the data properly, there might be only 5 vehicles are ever used above a full charge of a battery across the whole fleet. So could that fleet be operated slightly differently in order that more vehicles could be electrified. So rather than saying any driver, any set of keys, it's actually being a bit more specific about how, and smarter about how vehicles are allocated to maximise the electrification potential.
Yeah, so you're saying basically, some people want to shoehorn an electric vehicle to a diesel operation, and sometimes you've got to think outside the box to a great extent as well. Good. Andy, how do you start your conversation off, and how do you get around this interesting decision?
To go back to many years ago, there was a phrase in the computer, and it's a garbage in, garbage out. I mean, if you don't use the data that these guys are describing, then you're going to put the wrong solution in place, and then it's inevitably going to fail. And that's a disaster for all parties, frankly. We've had a number of conversations, Tim, about the need for the whole of the industry to step up here. The concept that you can just backfit an electric vehicle into a diesel application is fundamentally flawed, and so much of what we've been sharing in the whole event have been about let's look critically at what we've done, let's put the past assumptions to one side, and let's start, because we have to find individual solutions for every individual operator, because every operation is different. And the struggles that I found on behalf of Renault Trucks is when you're going in with somebody who's got that mindset, we've got a traditional outlook, if you like, in the business that said, well, we just need, we ran this with diesel for 40 years, so we're going to replace that with electric. That approach is almost doomed to failure. On the contrast, then, when you find people who want to explore and experiment, our first vehicle went into Warburton's, working out of Enfield into central London. When we were tracking out on a daily basis, I was delighted to find it was going into Essex and up to Hertfordshire, because the operator was exploring the capability of the truck, building their own knowledge, building their own data, and building their own case study for how an electric vehicle could work. And then that learning then is embedded in the business and leads them to apply into other situations and other applications. So yeah, please experiment. My first message is, for God's sake, just do it. It's easy. The manufacturers are bringing their product to market. We've got a range of demonstrators. Talk to us and we'll help you explore that. But critically, we will bring people alongside you so that you don't fall into the bear traps that are there for the unwary operator.
No, I think it's great. It's a great message to take to people. Don't wait to the very end. Don't have an incline, not a cliff edge, and learn from it, because that's exactly what it's all about. In the end, we're all learning. It's good to get involved with the learning process. It's a little bit different, Alastair, for Einride. So go and tell us how are you getting into the UK market? What's happening?
Yeah, Einride, their sort of modus operandi is they provide an end-to-end solution. So we will work with shippers, and when we launch into UK, proud to announce we'll be partnering with PepsiCo in the Midlands, starting operations there this summer. Key things is they will provide, bringing forward from the other teams speaking here, is the data, but also the mindset adaptation that the customer needs. So we'll be looking at what lanes they're running, what frequency, what duration. So we'll do a complete data analysis on all of the flows from what they've got. We will then put that into our operating model with the vehicles that we're using. Again, adapting that, and then come up with effectively a roadmap for them to transition the entire fleet to electrification. Normally we'll start off with a percentage, but over a number of years duration, depending how the supply chain can support us, we'll look at that. But effectively, it's a sort of end-to-end solution from we will put in the charging infrastructure, we will provide the hardware of the vehicles, and we'll provide the telematics and digitization and route planning, TMS plus effectively for that operation.
Yeah, so you're trying to become a one-stop shop, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I think that's the key message for everybody saying here, is the fact that get involved now. That's the important thing. But telematics for a diesel vehicle isn't necessarily the same as telematics for an electric vehicle. Right, come on. There's more to it.
Define different, right?
Yeah.
So our approach is Geotab for all. So you can connect, plant machinery, trucks, vans, ICE vehicles, electric vehicles, all with our single piece of hardware. Admittedly, one in each vehicle, right? But actually, that Geotab approach for all means that you're getting all of the rich vehicle data, regardless of drivetrain, regardless of type, and. From that, the fleet managers, the operations managers, transport, they've got actual insight into their fleet of how they're operating to then drive those critical decisions, whether it be, for example, service, maintenance, and repair, right? People, as we've touched on a little bit in the panel, people are struggling to get vehicles within the supply chain. So how do they keep the older vehicles, the diesels, on the road longer, but operating in a more efficient manner? So, simple things like having the insight of, we idled last month for 30 days and it cost X. Well, actually, if we just make a behavioural shift, we can reduce that, we can also save costs, and. So, in terms of the question of, is telematics different in diesel and ICE, diesel and EV? From our perspective, we want to read all of that data and still provide the same deliverable insight. I'll give you a great example. So, if you are filling up your diesel transit today, or you're charging your vehicle, times that by a fleet of 10, 100,000, however many vehicles, you've still got to have the insight and understanding where is that energy, whether it be electric or liquid fuel, where is that going, how is it being used, and how can we operate in a more efficient manner, going back to the overarching point here, and how can we operate more sustainably. So from our perspective, it's Geotab for all, happily, and that's how we'll help and support, one, the end customer, but also their future business strategies.
Okay, that's good. James, from EST's point of view, I mean, are you proactive or reactive? Do you wait for customers to come to you, or do you go to customers, or have you got a target area, 1 or 10 vehicles, or the big fleets? What do you do?
Yeah, so we're here to help as many fleets as we can. Probably greater value in going above the 10 vehicles, but we're happy to help a small fleet if that's what they need. Also help with big fleets as well, and do some work with some big names. And obviously every use case is different, and that's what we're finding using obviously the data that we get out of that. Is there's a different pathway, there are different characteristics of depots, there are different energy requirements across fleets. So yeah, we are able to help any size fleet with the transition, certainly giving them clear insights as to what it may look like, and helping them to ask the right questions of people going forwards as they start the transition.
Yeah, I'm conscious at the moment we just talked about fleet, and in the end you can't do electric vehicles without property and being involved and the property and that. Andy, sorry, a bit formal to you then. Andy, in terms of property side of it, obviously it's not a traditional truck manufacturer's sort of domain, and also it's not a fleet engineer's domain. You get involved, so you must see other people involved and other titles within a business getting involved.
The arguments and the conversations have become much more mature over the last couple of years. And as you know, we started this journey actually before COVID. Was when our first electric medium-duty chassis came into the UK. And at that point, people were exploring. Fleet managers typically were tasked with, go ahead, find out what this is about electric trucks. And in truth, some of the big operators ran away from us at that point because they actually put two and two together and came to a very big number indeed. What has been critical for those that are most secure in their decarbonisation ambitions has been they brought together those different parties. In many cases we've seen big challenge in the sector is who owns the property at the end of the day, because if there's another investment to be made beyond the trucks themselves into infrastructure, then if you've got a short-term deal on a lease on a site, or if you've got a short-term contract with an operator, that just introduces another element of risk and uncertainty which no one likes. What we've seen is a number of sustainability managers coming in, but again sometimes they've got a little bit of a soft brief in every sense, and unless their ambitions are aligned with the most senior members of the senior stakeholders in the business. We did an early deal with Carlsberg Marston's, as many will be aware. And the first two vehicles have gone in there as proof of concept, if you like. That became much easier when the chief exec said, right, I want to make this work. I want to see what electric vehicles mean in our business. And when the chief exec is saying, I'll make it happen, then the property guy does what he's told, and the fleet guy does what he's told. Each of the different elements are brought together. But as we've talked many times, the getting the best use of the vehicles is an enormously complex task, and it relies on expertise, some of which sits within the business and some of which doesn't, which is why I see the value in guys, they are panel members here. Either they can take away the problem entirely, or they can bring their expertise to really just say, look, if I were you, the data leads me to this path or this conclusion. So it's just much more complex, and we need to use all the resources that we have available to us.
Yeah, I think certainly from my experience is the fact that the chief exec says we're doing 30% by 2030, again, and then they give it middle management because they don't realise the implications on making the transition. And next thing you know, you're held back because it has to go up to the exec board because these are real big policy decisions in terms of do you sign a 3-year or a 5-year deal or do you buy your property? These are big decisions.
Just be grateful you're not in the public sector, because then I was speaking to a fleet manager in Northern Ireland. He said, my political boss has said we're going to decarbonise the fleet. He said I can't keep the rain out of the building, and he wants me to run 20 electric vehicles from the site.
Yeah.
I mean that's
practical. Yeah,
that's the degree of stress that some of these guys are under. So I understand why people are cautious, shall we say.
And Alastair, in terms of, do you have the same sort of issues? I mean, obviously mainly port-based and things like that. Are the issues the same?
Some of the issues that we've got is the organisation wishing to decarbonise. Yes, in environments you do get sustainability managers, directors wishing to direct that. However, as Andrew said, it's normally top down is where the direction is given, because that's where the investment sits, that's where the change. What we're finding is a lot of the shippers, particularly in the UK, have been burnt by, dare I say, Brexit, by fuel shortages, by shortages of drivers. So therefore there's an apprehension for them to protect their supply chain, because it's fundamental to their customer base and clearly in their business, and they don't want to lose the customers. So it's providing them with assurance that the technology works, and probably also importantly is it's cost efficient. And then probably to a lesser extent, but very much still up there, is the sustainability drive to get there. Because I think that's one thing we're finding is entering the UK market. It is, dare I say, behind the other markets we're in, be it Germany or the Nordics, it is behind those nations with regard to incentives. And dare I say, sometimes there's still a conundrum where they're still thinking about, is it electric? Is it hydrogen we go for? Whereas the other nations and some of the OEMs have already taken that decision, and they're putting in production lines that are electric. So, dare I say, it's probably going to continue that way. But with academia, we've been supported with academia saying, actually, electrification provides the best value for money, and that's particularly for our user case that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of cases, everything's individual, if you like. There's a rough template, but then there's a lot of flexibility in terms of that. So we've only got 5 or 6 minutes now, so I'll give you opportunity. Starting with you, Rick, if you're going to give somebody advice and say practical strategy, what would you say? What would you say is a practical strategy at the moment?
So I think first of all, come over to the Geotab stand, speak to the team.
Yeah, I think it's,
let's connect your vehicles. But in all seriousness, though, I think what's absolutely critical is understanding that real data, not assumptions. One of the things that I don't think any of us have touched on during the panel today is temperature, for example. So temperature in the UK in winter is a lot different to summer, right? And how do these changes impact the fleet? Now, you're only going to know that by connecting your vehicles and managing that fleet, using those insights that business like Geotab can provide. So I think as a takeaway, I think the first step is understanding how that fleet is operating, understanding the model that you want to move to, as I think we've all said, but also then driving that change. And once you've made the change, you've then got to operate electric as well. It's not just, okay, we're here, it's the end of the journey. You need people within your supply chain to then help you operate an electric fleet or hydrogen and as we mentioned. So I think that's really key. It's not just, hey, let's get green and that's it. You've then got to move and keep being efficient.
Thanks, man. James, for yourself, in terms of some advice and practical strategy?
I think there's the obvious question of cost, and using the TCO, you still don't always get there to save money by going electric. So you've got to think about what value does that add to the people you're working for in terms of their targets. Are there other creative ways? So, for example, people may spend a lot of money or have within their strategies carbon offset, where they say, we'll pay to, plant trees in the other side of the world. Actually, would that money be best redirected as a carbon inset to say, actually, let's invest in our supply chain, or let's invest in our fleet where we know we can reduce tons of emissions. So rather than sending that money away on an offset that you can't see and just carry on as you were, actually helping to use that to justify decisions of by getting that money back in your own business, back to decarbonising your fleet.
Yeah. an interesting point there, the fact that going to electric might cost you as a TCO model. And I think I've got a client who does CO2 per pound, so like saying, okay, this is how much the transition is making for us, so the board know about it.
Yeah, typically, so when we do a fleet review, and if the TCO comes out more with the electric, I will quantify, a range of costs per tonne of emissions saved, and that can be quite insightful in terms of what's being spent on offset, etc.
Yeah, good. Andy?
We'll just pick that up. I mean, it depends on the organisation. We're working with Tarmac. They've taken the first electric concrete mixer into service.
Yeah,
and ironically for Tarmac, taking electric out of the transport system is a damn so easy than taking out of the production system for cement. But they have taken a very grown-up approach. They're looking strategically at not the immediate benefits of moving to an electric vehicle, but they know that it is part of their strategic plan to take carbon out of their business. Ironically, by starting that journey and by doing this initial work, they've identified a whole series of soft benefits that actually they couldn't have anticipated in the first instance, particularly around the safety of the vehicles in this instance. But there was a lovely piece posted of the vehicle working inside a new warehouse, delivering concrete, which previously, no exhaust emissions. So from a usability point of view, suddenly some of those benefits are huge. But in particular, the work that has been done to, in effect, re-evaluate the operation has identified some savings, soft savings in other parts of the business that couldn't have been quantified. So back to James's point, the TCO is a bit of a blunt instrument at this point. We have an end game in mind. We have to commit to that. And actually, by doing so early, there are lots of benefits, lots of other things that come as a consequence of that. And we have to try to quantify some of those as well. But if we sit on our hands, then we'll never realise them.
Okay. Alastair, do you agree with that? Is that something you...
I think, just taking on from Andy, it's just get on and do it. This technology that we've got, we've been operating in the Nordics for 3 years with Lidl. We started off with a handful of vehicles, and now by the end of this year, we've electrified the whole of the Lidl operation in the Stockholm metropolitan area with all electric fleets. So technology is there, it's get on with it, and OEMs, get your lines converted to electric and give us some trucks.
Okay, that's a nice way to finish. I think the main takeaway I think from everybody here is get a roadmap, get yourself. You know what the end game is. The end game is zero. Get there, learn, get an incline, don't get a cliff edge. And I'd like to thank the panelists. Thanks very much indeed for all your time. Thank you very much. Thank you.